Hello everyone, how's everybody doing? I hope you're doing fine, doing like me. Guess I'm okay for now. I don't know, after today, maybe you'll beat me up and I won't be fine anymore. Anyways, today I'm going to be continuing with Ayn Rand, and she was a so-called philosopher. I'm saying she wasn't. In order to call her a philosopher, you need to define the word philosophy first. And no one has done that in the last, I claim, the last 2,500 years, since the days of the Greeks. No one has defined the word philosophy, and that's where the problem starts. Okay, in other words, they haven't defined it in a rational way, in a way that it can be then the term or the word philosophy can be used consistently. That's where the problem starts, and so I have taken the trouble to define the word philosophy in a way that it can be incorporated within science. And because it can now be incorporated within science, we can use it consistently. But there's a lot of people who won't like my definition because it will obviously destroy their religion. The main point that it's going to destroy is that people introduce subjectivity. Subjects that belong to subjectivity, such as ethics and morality and justice and politics, what we, the best way to govern or the best way to behave. And those things, they're not philosophy. Not if we're going to use it consistently. Now if we're going to use it objectively. And if you bring Ayn Rand, some of them might call her Ayn Rand. Her philosophy, so-called philosophy, was known as objectivism. And there's a couple of things wrong with it. First, she was using the old-fashioned, the traditional notion of philosophy. And second, it wasn't objective because she kept introducing that every sentence practically that she spoke or wrote was subjective. It relied on the senses, it relied on cognition, it relied on epistemology, on what we think we know. And so all of her definitions were like that, and all her philosophy, if we're going to call it that, was like that. It was subjective. So I disagree. A better term for her philosophy or her way of thinking, really, it should be subjectivism. Okay, we're going to see that, and I'm going to show that objectively. I'm going to show it objectively because I'm going to show her definitions are all based on opinion. Okay, they're not concise, they're not crisp, and above all, they're not observer-less. All of them invoke and include an observer. Okay, that's what I want to show objectively. Okay, by simply quoting good old Ayn Rand. But let's start with a definition here. Really, not a definition, with a subject. It's the subject of existence. Okay, and a couple comments were made. I wanted to clarify, and one has to do with existence. The other one with this thing we call evidence. I just want to clarify this so that people know where I stand on it at least, right? And one person put a comment in there, and he or she says, observational theories deal with things that we are forced to deal with in our daily lives. Supernatural theories deal with that for which there is no evidence of any kind. And yeah, that kind of introduces some of the subject that we're going to deal with today. Now, supernatural theories are not dependent on evidence. That's not the issue. Okay? Under rational science, supernatural theories are theories where the entity invoked is imaginable. You invoke Zeus. Zeus is imaginable. I hope you can imagine Zeus. I mean, we've got pictures of Zeus everywhere. So good old Zeus, he's okay as an object. I mean, when you put a picture of a god, holding maybe what is it, a thunderbolt in his right arm, throwing it, we can all imagine that. What we cannot imagine is some of the magical mechanisms that people introduce together with the gods of mythology or even of any of the traditional religions. The problem there is, okay, we'll get to that. I'll get to the questions at the end, okay? So hold your questions or write them down. I'm going to go through them later on. I'll try to answer them, as many as I can within the time frame. But if I don't get to answer them, what I do usually is look at them and then answer them either at the next session or I'll answer them in Patreon, okay? So if you've got questions, no problem, just put them up there. Anyways, a supernatural theory has to do with the theory, not with the entity. The entity is okay. I have no problem with God. You want to introduce God and say God created the universe, God created a flower. I have no problem with God. I have a problem with how he created the flower. That's where I have a problem. It's the mechanism that rational science criticizes. Okay, so the difference is with a mathematical theory, mathematical physics, is the mathematical theory cannot even be imagined. You cannot imagine the objects. And the reason for that is they're using concepts as objects. They're talking about field. They're talking about energy. They're talking about mass. All those are concepts. You cannot say mass did this, energy did that, a field did that. That's where the problem is. Or time was bent. It's unimaginable. That's why a supernatural theory differs from an irrational theory, the ones from mathematical physics, because you cannot imagine in irrational theories, you cannot even imagine the entity that's performing the motion. Okay, that's where the problem is. And I'm going to be talking about that a little bit today, just for those who are not aware. I'm going to be on J.F. Gariepi's program, The Public Space, in about 4 hours. So I'll be talking a little bit about that. The subject today over there is space-time. So if you're interested in space-time, well, you may want to hang in there and see me in about 3 or 4 hours. Anyways, that's the difference between irrational theories and supernatural theories. Supernatural theories, you can imagine the objects that perform the action, the gods or the spirits or whatever, they put them as an angel or whatever, okay. Irrational theories, they're using concepts as physical objects, and you cannot imagine a concept, love, moving a mountain. No, I cannot imagine that at all. I can't even imagine love before you move the mountain with love. That's the problem, okay? Definitions are important, and that's the difference between irrational and supernatural, okay? But let's go with the second comment that popped up there. Someone said, if it is true, all right, that truth does not exist, then truth certainly does exist. Well, this is great for poetry. It's good word wizardry. A lot of what Ayn Rand did. But that's all it is. It's just word wizardry. Until we define the word truth, until we define the word exist, we don't know what this person said. Okay? We don't know what's going through this person's head. And so let's do that. If we define it like they do it in at the Wikipedia or the notion that you find in the dictionaries, you say, what is exist? What does exist mean? Does God exist? Does God not exist? What am I saying when I say God exists? God doesn't exist, okay? And this is what you'll find out there. You'll say existence, the ability of an entity to interact with physical or mental reality. Well, the problem is the word reality is a synonym of existence, so we still don't know what existence means because they're synonyms. If you look up the word reality, it means exist. So we're done there. There's no more understanding that you can fit in there. In philosophy, it refers to the ontological property of being. Well, if you look at being, you'll find the same thing. It means existence. In philosophy, being means the existence of a thing. And that's according to the Wikipedia. How about the dictionary.com? Well, you can look up the word because it's never been defined in 10,000 years. Exist, to have actual being. Again, being is a synonym of exist. If you look up being, it's just they're just going around in circles. Okay. Be, to have life or animation, to live. You look up live, it's to exist, and exist is to live. Being, the fact of existence. Existence, something that exists. To be, to exist, or to live. So what have we learned? All we have is synonyms. Okay? And so how do we get around this? Well, we put a good definition of exist. Exist means physical presence. Now we know what exist means. It means physical presence. What does that mean? Well, it means that if God wants to exist, oh, well, they got the wrong one there. If God wants to exist, he's got to have location. Okay, let's see if I can put that back up there again. Here, good old God. Yeah, if God wants to exist, he's got to have, first he's got to be an object. Okay, he's got to be an object of some kind. Table, a chair, a bowl. If that's what you think God is, fine. That's the first requirement. Sine qua non. You need to be an object if you want to exist. Concepts do not exist. Not in rational science. They exist in the world of ordinary speech, the vulgar world, the vulgar notion that we have of exist. We say, oh, love exists. And we say that and leave it at that because we never define the word exist. And we don't need to, not in our ordinary notions. We don't care about those precise meanings there. But here we're saying if we're going to use the word exist, we're going to debate. We're going to talk intelligently. We're going to talk rationally in a way that we're all on the same page, right? Exist can only refer to an object. Is it sufficient for God to be an object? No. If God wants to exist, God has to have presence. By that I mean he's got to be an object and he's got to have location. There has to be a distance between my chest and his chest. Then God can exist. He exists not because I believe or because, I have a sensory experience of God. No, God exists by definition. We just applied the definition. Is God an object? Yes. He's got arms, legs, a beard. Fine. So he's an object. Does he have location? Is there a distance between God and every object in the universe? Is there a distance between God and the earth? Is there a distance between God and the sun? Is there a distance between God and the Andromeda galaxy? Then yes. And you can't put him outside of the universe and say, well, God's outside the universe. Because even if God's outside in the fourth dimension, there better be a straight line between the Andromeda galaxy and God. God has no place conceptually in the universe or even beyond in the 26th dimension from escaping from a straight line from any object to him. And if there is a straight line, then God exists by definition. We don't have to believe or not believe or worry about whether we can prove his existence. No, God exists by definition. Okay, so it's very straightforward, very simple to prove the existence of God. You just have to define the term and we're done. All you have to do is say, what is the definition of exist? And that's it. I have a saying, and it goes something like this. If you want to know whether God exists or not, just define the word exist. And of course, you also have to define the word God. If you define God, then for sure he's not going to exist because definitions only apply to concepts. If God wants to be an object, he's got to be a figure and you can point to God. Okay, you can say that's God right there, a flaming bush or whatever, right? Okay, then you point to it and says, okay, does that flaming bush exist? Well, does it have location? That's how, so it's objective. That's objectivism. Okay, so let's apply that same way of thinking. We're going to apply it to physics. What is physics about? And I claim physics is the science of existence. Physics has exclusive control or possession of the word exist. Anyone who talks about existence of anything, you can talk about unicorns, you can talk about, leprechauns, whatever you want to talk about, doesn't matter. The chair, the tree, the dog, the rock, you step the boundary over into physics. Physics is the science of existence. Physics only tries to explain that which happened, and that which happened with objects that exist, right? Anyways, that's my definition. But what do we have? There was an article that was, I guess, commissioned, you can say, or there were funds allocated to figuring out what physics is about. And the Institute of Physics, IOP, right? Probably the #1 institution of physics on the planet, commissioned this study, or I guess set it in motion, put the funds, and they researched it for 4 years. They consulted everyone on planet Earth that was somebody, people from different disciplines, and this is what they came up with. I'll go over some of the conclusions of what physics is officially. Okay, so now that you are going to read this, you're going to figure out what physics is from the official point of view, right? Here it is. And what happened was they went in there and they said, look, what questions do these people ask? What does a physicist do? They ask all these kinds of questions. And it says physicists focus their thinking on developing insight into what the observable world is made of. Observable? So that means physics is going to be a subjective discipline. It's just going to look at what we observe. Not the things we don't observe, like we can't observe a magnetic field, whatever observe means. I mean, are they talking about eyesight here? Are they talking about running a test, touching, detecting? Are they going to smell it? Are they going to taste it? What does observable mean? And then it continues, and how its constituents behave. Okay, no problem there. Trying their hardest to achieve a deep understanding. Okay, what is it that they're really trying to do? Physicists seek the most fundamental explanations that have utility and currency across many domains. Now, utility, we're not interested. Utility is technology. They are not satisfied with superficial explanations. Well, hold it. We have not only superficial, but we have irrational explanations. What is relativity? What is quantum? I mean, when a particle can be at two places at once, is that superficial? Is that rational? I mean, what is that? This involves systematic criticisms of every idea and result. They have to bring to bear a wide range of knowledge, the big word knowledge there. Again, cognizance, it talks about what you can perceive, what you think you know. And what you know is not what I know, and what is truth to you is a lie to me. So what does knowledge mean? Do we introduce knowledge into science? To make sure each analysis is consistent with what is already known. Again, known, know, knowledge. Those words are, 4-letter words in science. We don't use them. They are forced to be very creative, always looking for new answers or new approaches. All this thinking is informed by experiment. So how do you experiment on an invisible, intangible entity like gravity? Is that why we don't have any idea what gravity is? Because we rely on experiment, observation, and measurement, which is what they propose there. Carefully and cleverly designed. Okay, physicists aim for that sharper, deeper, quantitative understanding. Quantitative? What's quantitative got to do with science? Based on mathematical models. You can see how this all developed. It developed from math, which they use and reuse in order to make predictions. I thought astrologers made predictions. I didn't know that scientists made predictions that work universally. And again, work, what do they mean by work? Are they talking about, philosophy here? Are they talking about technology maybe? Is that what work means? So these people, you can see, it's all subjective. They're talking about what we know, what we can experiment on or determine through experiment. Is that what science is about? Observation? Do we observe gravity? Can we test gravity? I mean, we can measure gravity and tell you, yeah, you fall to the center of the earth at 9.8 meters per second square. That's a description. You measured 1 billion times, you came up with that number, now you have a precise number, whatever number of decimals that is, okay? Great. So you have a perfect mathematical description, measurement of gravity. What does that tell you about the cause of gravity, the mechanism Mother Nature uses to pull you down to the center of the earth? Is she pushing you with particles? Is she dragging you with ropes? How is she pulling or pushing on you? That's what we want to know. That's the point of science, of physics, trying to figure out how the invisible universe works. You know, we all understand the visible universe. You pull on a rope and the bucket goes up through the pulley. And we say, okay, we understood the whole thing just by watching. Now do that with gravity. How are you going to explain gravity now? Do you need math for that? Do you need an equation for that? Do you need numbers, measurement, any of that? So this is the issue. Okay, so because of that, you know, they ended up with this notion here that says questions physicists and other scientists are attempting to answer. Okay, what exists? Interesting, because they ended up with the same thing that I'm proposing. Physics is the science of existence. Yeah, what exists? And when we say what exists, we know the visible stuff, the tangible stuff. That's easy. That's a piece of cake. We take it for granted. You know, we touch the table and say, well, the table exists, right? Gravity, does gravity exist? How are you going to determine that if you can't see or touch it or test it in any way through an experiment? That's the question that we had before. That's why today, after 10,000 years, they can't give you a rational explanation for stuff like magnetism or electricity or gravity, right? Why do things happen? If we're talking about causes, mechanisms, that's a valid question. So those two first ones are okay. I have no problem with them. But then we say, how do we come to know? Now we introduce the observer. now they're changing the subject. Now they're saying, you know, here we're going to rely on your senses, right? What you can sense, what you can perceive. And I want to emphasize those words because you're going to see that Ayn Rand is right in there. She talks about only about what we sense, what we perceive. And that makes it very subjective and not at all objective, okay? What can we do with knowledge? Well, we can throw it away. You know, we have no use for knowledge, okay? So, yeah, knowledge is a big problem also. People think they know. I mean, do we know that God exists? Do you know that God exists? Well, how are you going to prove it? And yeah, we've been trying to prove it for now, what, thousands of years? Okay. Okay, let me go here. Article continues here with another point, and you can see here how it becomes very subjective. Characteristics of physics explanation. Physics aims to provide the most fundamental explanations possible in terms of constituents of the universe and how they behave. Okay, I've got no problem with that. That's good. But see, the word is explanation. See, and we're going to find out real quick that science or physics, mathematical physics, is not at all about explanations. It's about descriptions. That's what they think science is. But see, they use the word explanation in this report to the IOP, the people who worked on this project, right? The cycle of developing a physics explanation. Again, explanation. Physics explanations are durable and reliable. Okay, man, it's good to know that. You know, a particle can be at two places at the same time. That's a good explanation. I guess it's very reliable, right? Because of the way in which they have been developed and severely tested. How do you test that a particle can be at two places at once? Okay? And I'm using an extreme example, and I harp on that because it shows an extreme example of how irrational mathematical physics has become. Physics is an empirical discipline. Empirical. We empiricize this. In other words, you got to go to the lab and do an experiment and do some hands-on, and physics becomes an empirical thing, whatever. Okay? A phenomenon, experimental measurements. Again, measurement. What does measurement have to do with physics? I'm trying to get an explanation. They were talking about explanations there. So if they're talking about explanation, what does measurement have to do with explanation? Measurement is a description. That's what all of mathematics is. An equation is only a description of motion, specifically. Thinking and reasoning. Physics explanations are developed from data. From data? okay, using reason and logic, okay, whatever that is, and refined by argument and critique. In other words, there's discussion. That's interesting because I try to publish a paper in Nature. I try to publish another paper in Science magazine, and they sent me a very polite reply saying that they have very little editorial space for my stuff, that I should go and visit the philosophy group because they don't consider what I do physics. And you go to the philosophy group and they say, well, you know, it's out of topic. You know, I sent them also to philosophy group questions of issue when I dealt with the issue of object and exist. They had no idea what I was talking about. They don't know what an object is. And here you go to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and they go in circles forever on what an object and what existence is. They still don't know. They have meetings every year. They have conferences every year. And they're still trying to figure out what an object is, what a thing is, and what existence means. But they won't accept, you know, what I'm proposing, which is concise, rational, consistent use, you know. They don't accept that. So yeah, we have all these problems, and the question is whether that's an issue of philosophy or an issue of physics, right? Physics explanations are developed from data, okay. Using reason and logic, okay. Modeling. Many explanations are based on models with which to think and to make prediction. Predictions? What does predictions have to do with science? See, what has happened is these people say, look, I can predict there's going to be an eclipse tomorrow, okay, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And so they have this power of prediction, and people say, oh, look, these people can predict, so that means they're doing science. They're really, you know, if they can predict the future, what's going to happen, obviously they know something, right? And so that's how, you know, prediction enters the realm of physics. Why? Because, you know, if you know the car is traveling at 50 miles per hour, and if there's no other influence, any accident or anything, well, you can predict that in 1 hour it'll be 50 miles away. And in that sense, mathematics says, oh, we can predict. See, we can predict that the Earth is going to go around the sun and be back here in a year. And we're going to have winter, summer, and so on down the line. Why? Because mathematics uses, you know, once you measure something, you can use it to predict. How fast is my pen going to fall to the floor? 9.8 meters per second squared. We know it. And why do we know it? Well, because we measured it 1 billion times, so we created these numbers, these measurements, and now we can predict. And that's how prediction entered science. But I still don't know how the pen fell to the floor. Oh, that's philosophy. That's the runaround that you get, okay? Mathematical formulation. Some models result in power mathematical relationships between quantities. Yeah, they had to put all these quantities and math and prediction because this is what mathematicians do, okay? They are the ones who are using all this stuff, and they turn science into, you know, a measurement and prediction and numbers game. That's why they introduced all these terms. We don't use any of those in physics, because in physics we're trying to explain mechanisms. And measurement has no relation whatsoever to mechanisms. If it helps you infer, deduce what gravity does, fine, that's great. That's more power to you. But saying that measurement, you know, a meter per second, whatever that is, for whatever motion that is, that's an explanation. That's where we have a problem. Okay? And here we have, just in case, because you're going to say, well, Bill, that's your opinion. Let's get some authority behind these concepts so that you don't blame it all on me, okay? Here's Mr. Simonek, and he's a professor. I think he's retired now. He's an emeritus professor at university, and he says, science doesn't explain. Science describes. So you describe a chair. You know, it's got a backrest, a seat, 4 legs, and you did science. You can measure the legs if you want. If you want to know, they're 1 meter high. They're great. And then you're doing science. That's according to Mr. Simonek. He thinks that science is all about just measuring. Okay. And that's what it's become. Here we have, just in case, more authority, more, important things behind there so that you can see where all these people are coming from. And he says, you and I evolved in a world of 3 dimensions. We can't visualize more dimensions. I can visualize 3 dimensions in my head, but I use X, Y, and Z to describe them mathematically. Now I go to 4 dimensions or 5 dimensions. I can't visualize them anymore. I can't say, now close your eyes and view in your head 5 dimensions, because I can't do it either. So we're stuck needing mathematics because evolution didn't equip us to be able to visualize quantum mechanics. It didn't equip us to visualize 11-dimensional spacetimes. Evolution did this to us. I love that statement, So they have no explanations, and they say, look, all we can do is describe, and we cannot even imagine the world that we're talking about, the theories we are proposing, because, they're 4-dimensional, 5-dimensional, 26 dimensionals. And we're not equipped by nature. Mother Nature did this to us. She made us only 3-dimensional beings, and so 4-dimensional whatevers are outside, are beyond our comprehension. You can only do it mathematically. You can do it with X, Y, Z, W's, ABCs, all the letters in the alphabet if you want. There's 26, so you got to have 26 dimensions, right? But you can't physically reproduce it here in 3 dimensions because we are stuck in 3-dimensional world, and our universe is obviously, anywhere from 4 to 26 dimensions or more. I don't know if they're coming up with more of them. And just in case, we have Mr. Weinberg also here, and he said in one of his shows, I don't think mathematics can ever be regarded as an explanation in itself for anything, and this has not always been well understood. See, the question is whether we're interested in explanation. Is physics about explaining or not? And that's a decision you have to reach on your own. Nobody can do it for you. You can't say, well, let me look it up in the dictionary. No. You got to figure out, are you interested in having an explanation of a mechanism of how gravity works, of how light works, how magnetism works, how electricity works, how the atom works? If you're interested in those kinds of issues, you can't do it with math, because math only describes. Here you have the gurus telling you, if you're looking for an explanation, you won't find it. You'll find descriptions, mathematical descriptions. So that's a decision you have to take on your own. No one can take it for you. No one can think for you. No one can love for you. Okay? No one can feel pain for you. Okay? What is physics in the alternative? Well, not in the alternative. I'll give my alternative. But here, this is what these people concluded. This is what physics means or is to them. Physics is the science of matter and its motion. The science that deals with concepts such as force, energy, and mass. Is that what physics deals with? All these are mathematical concepts. Can you explain anything with force, with energy, with mass? I'm going to be dealing with that today in JF's program, the public space. But mass, just think about it for a second. You got this enormous mass, this unimaginably infinite mass. We call it a black hole. That's what a black hole is, just infinite mass, 0 volume. And okay, that's a mathematical concept. That's an equation. Tell me how, by what mechanism, mass compels a star to go around that little dot, that inexistent volume. Because that's what they're saying. They're saying, look, how do we detect a black hole? Well, the way we detect it is very simple. We see that a star is rolling around nothing, orbiting nothing, very fast. Oh, there's got to be a mass in the center of that orbit. So the star is just orbiting a mass. Okay, let's concede. I'll concede. Please tell me how mass, kilograms, how does kilograms do it? How does kilograms compel the star to go around? See, we can do that with math. We can say use Newton's equation to go simple. mass divided by distance square, and then you can explain more or less, a black hole. You can say, okay, not explain, but describe. You can say, okay, if there's an object such as a star around a gazillion kilograms, it would go at this speed. So you got a description. You can calculate all that. That's fine. So far, so good. No problem. Now the question is, how does those kilograms, how does that mass do it? That's what we want to know. And that's where they run into trouble. That's where you won't find a mathematician. That's when they'll give you some warp space explanation, physical interpretation. That's where we have a problem, in the physical interpretation. The study of matter, energy, and the interaction between them. Interaction between energy and matter? What is energy? Can you please draw it for me? Can you make a little picture of energy so I know what you're talking about? Okay, but what that really means is that physics is about asking fundamental questions and trying to answer them by observing and experimenting. How can you observe and experiment a magnetic field, or even worse, gravity? What are you observing? What are you experimenting with? This is something you got to fall back and do some armchair physics. You got to drink a beer. You got to have a beer in your hand. You can't do it without a beer. Okay, that's important. You got to think. You got to visualize. You're not going to figure it out by going to the lab and saying, okay, let me drop a pen 1,000,000 times and figure out what the mechanism of gravity is. You can do it until you kill yourself. You can drop the pen all the time. Are you going to figure out how gravity works just by dropping the pen, by going to the lab and performing repeatable experiments forever, and measuring and saying it falls at this speed, at this acceleration? Is that how you're going to figure out what gravity is and how Mother Nature does gravity? See, these are the questions you got to answer, okay? This is where the problem is. The problem is in the explanations of the mechanisms. And that's what we claim physics is about. Math is something else. Math is, measuring, calculating, getting equations, describing. That's what math is. Physics, explanations. Explanations of what? Of qualitative, not quantitative, qualitative phenomena, of mechanisms. You got to explain how Mother Nature does this invisible trick. And the only way you're going to figure it out is by laying back and visualizing. And specifically, what I mean by that, it means that you have to make visible her invisible mediators. You have to make visible her intangible mediators. You got to make it visible. Then you can understand the mechanism. That's what physics is about. Okay, so we don't know what exist means. We don't know what physics is. Do we know what philosophy is? Because Ayn Rand did philosophy, okay? And you go in there and you look at philosophy to see, because again, we need to define these terms if we're going to use the word philosophy in any sensible way, if we're on the same page. Philosophy, this is the one you're going to find out there. Essentially, people copy this, all right? This was from one of the visitors. It says, the explanation of the fundamental questions about existence, knowledge, values, reasons, mind, and art. And yeah, we have a problem because, again, it's a jack of all trades. We're saying we're covering every base. Philosophy is everything. It's thinking, it's making assumptions, it's reasoning, it's conclusions, it's existence, it's the whole works. So what is philosophy? That's like saying God is everything. Well, God is everything, God is nothing. I mean, what can you say with the word God if God's going to be everything? And if philosophy is going to mean everything that you can think of, then what is philosophy? What's the purpose of philosophy? Okay. And here one person tried to answer that question. Says, philosophy, Bill does not understand the purpose of philosophy. The purpose of philosophy is to ground ethics. Well, I thought ethics was something related to good and bad, right or wrong. I thought that was opinion. Ethics, justice, good, bad. Does a lion, when he kills, an animal out there, a deer or a zebra, is that ethical? Is it ethical for the tourist who's taking a picture to not intervene and save that poor animal from its death? Or is it more ethical to say, well, the lion has to eat? Mother Nature's law will allow them to, we're not going to intervene. So what's ethical? You know, ethical is just an opinion. It's always been an opinion. Ethics belongs to religion. All religion is just opinion. Okay? So, yeah, here you have the definition from the Wikipedia, and you can see they're all in the same, essentially the same line. It says the study of general and fundamental questions about existence, knowledge, values, reasons, mind. Again, they include everything in there. And so you never know what philosophy is, because philosophy is everything. Nobody has defined it in a concise manner that you can use consistently, rationally, scientifically. Okay? Okay? Here's another instance of that. Physics is not philosophy, but your approach to physics is highly philosophical. Well, you can't say that until you define what physics is and what philosophy is. So what we do in rational science is, look, if there's a crucial word, a strategic word, and you cannot define it, you're not allowed to use it. You're not allowed to use it until you define it. You got to tell me what philosophy is before you can say anything, before you can use it in a sentence. I think that's a fair way of dealing. You know, if I don't know what you mean by philosophy, you just said X. You just replace philosophy or philosophical with a letter X, and that's as much as we understood, because you haven't defined the term. Please tell us what philosophy is. And yeah, I do define it, and many people don't like my definition, because they say that it's got nothing to do with what philosophy has meant or been for the last 2,500 years. No kidding. I'm telling you, there's a paradigm shift. And the paradigm shift says that physics is rational explanations of mechanisms, and philosophy is rational explanations of behavior. One deals with man and how he behaves. The other one deals with objects, inert objects typically, right? And how they behaved, how they moved. Okay? Both of them are rational explanations, therefore they fall under science, which the definition of is rational explanations. Now we have a consistent use of the word philosophy and of the word physics. Okay? That's the way I think it should be treated. Okay? Anyways, I'm going to be criticizing Ayn Rand's definitions under my definition of philosophy. And that definition is that objective, it's just rational explanations of behaviors. And if you have a different definition, well, the onus is on you to put it forward. You have to define the term, then you can talk about, you know, what it means. But you got to defend it. You got to get inside the ring and defend your definition before you use the term. You have to allow that, you know, criticism, people to try to destroy it. And certainly you can't use anything out there, you know, that's out there today. So all you got to do is just think very deeply and come up with a good definition of the word philosophy. Otherwise, you know, you don't have a case. You're just going to be doing religion, especially if you're going to turn the word philosophy as something subjective. And that's what Ayn Rand did. And here we go. Let's go with Ayn Rand's first definition. And it's her definition of definition. Okay, and this is what good old Ayn Rand said about definition. She says, a definition is a statement that identifies the nature of the units subsumed under a concept. Okay, so what does she mean by unit? What is this thing she calls unit? See if we can find it here. Okay, and she says this is what a unit is. Okay, Ayn Rand says a unit is an existent, regarded as a separate member of a group of two or more similar members. She says, gives the example, 2 stones are 2 units, so are 2 square feet of ground. Well, 2 square feet is not a physical object. And to say, you could say the ground is an object, but you can't say 2 square feet is an object. But she says that 2 square feet is an existent. Okay? And as far as rational science is concerned, 2 square feet is a concept. So she's saying that a concept is an existent. She's identifying it with an existent, and she's going to later on identify an existent with an entity, which she considers, which is another word for object, a synonym of the word object. Okay? So just going to point those things out before we move forward. And so let's see what an existent is according to Miss Ayn Rand, Mrs. Ayn Rand, by the way. The building block of man's knowledge is the concept of an existent, of something that exists. Okay, so an existent is something that exists. Okay, good. Be it a thing, an attribute, or an action. An action is something that exists. An attribute is something that exists. So now we have adjectives are things that exist. So people say, well, maybe you're being too precise, Bill. Yeah. We have to know whether Ayn Rand was using her terms rationally. And here we show that she's not using them rationally. Whatever her definition was, we show here that she does include concepts within her notion of existent. She's including something that exists, a thing, so far so good, but she should have stopped there. She should have put a period there. She continues and says an attribute or an action. She's including adjectives and verbs. Those exist as well, according to her. To perceive a thing is to perceive that it exists. Perception tells us that something exists. Is that what the definition of exist is? Perception? Is that what we're saying here? We're saying that unless you can perceive it, it doesn't exist. Man grasps it implicitly on the perceptual level. She's talking about perception, which doesn't sound very much like objectivism. It sounds a lot like subjectivism. He grasps the constituents of the concept existent. Grasp? You mean like touching, like sensing? Knowledge that permits his consciousness to develop further. Knowledge, consciousness? Sounds like, the guy who senses things, the guy who grasps things, the guy who understands or knows. It's very subjective. I mean, I don't know how we're going to prove that God exists with all this grasp, knowledge, and consciousness bit. The concept existent is implicit even on the level of sensations. Now she's introducing the senses. If and to the extent that a consciousness is able to discriminate on that level. Now she's comparing things. And she continues, a sensation is a sensation of something. I hope she can sense a magnetic field, okay? As distinguished from the nothing. A sensation does not tell man what exists, but only that it exists. In other words, she's going to tell us, she's going to conclude that whatever exists is going to depend on what you can sense. She's going to introduce the senses, knowledge, cognition. Not very objective, really, because, I can't imagine a poor old blind man telling me, trying to convince him that the moon exists. I mean, he has no way of sensing it. So are we going to say that the moon does not exist for the blind man because he doesn't have the proper sensing, the eyes, equipment? So, we can't let it depend on the senses. And this is what you're going to see constantly, in Ayn Rand's so-called philosophy, okay? So where do we put this? Well, let me put this over here. Here we have anything related to knowledge we call religion. Knowledge is opinion. That's what knowledge is. What you know, I don't know, or I don't agree with. You know that God exists, and I know that God doesn't exist. Well, so which of the two has knowledge? Are we going to submit it to a vote? We all vote and say, oh, yeah, majority wins. 50% plus one of the humans on earth, they believe that God exists, so now we have knowledge. God exists, period. It's decreed by majority vote. And maybe next year we vote again and it goes the other way around. So now God doesn't exist. Poor old God gets slapped back and forth between existence and none. Consciousness, religion. Consciousness is a word that belongs strictly to religion. Anyone using the word consciousness is doing religion. That's simple. We have the Hare Krishnas down there at the bottom. That's where consciousness belongs in. Proof. Proof. You proved that God exists. How do you prove it? Proof is religion. Proof is a belief, is an opinion. Prediction, religion. Sensation, anything you can sense, is religion, because the quadriplegic, he can't sense anything with his hands, at least, you know. Blind man can't do it with his eyes. Deaf man can't do it with his ears. There's a untaste. I don't know. People who can't taste, you know, you can't taste, can't smell it. Okay, you got a cold, you don't smell it. It doesn't exist. The skunk doesn't exist for you because you can't smell him. Grasp, religion. All that's religion. Religion is the definition: personal opinion, knowledge, fact, truth, belief in a theory. All those have to do with religion. Everybody, every human on earth has a religion. Everyone believes in something, some theory and whatever. It's your belief. It doesn't mean that everybody else believes in that same theory that you believe in that same explanation. And in science, we don't have facts. We have statements of the facts. And those are very two different things that we're going to see throughout the series, right? Fact means that you're telling the crowd, you're saying you got to believe it because it's a fact. And I proved it, and it's knowledge, and I'm not going to let you challenge it. That's what fact means. On the other, and what truth also, proof, all those mean the same thing. Statement of the facts, you make an assumption of what you think the facts are. And you don't shove them down anybody's throat. And you say, look, let me assume that this was the initial scene, for example, in this murder case, right? So you're assuming that that was the case, okay? Not that you prove it and say, you got to take it as a fact, jury. You got to accept it as a fact because I proved the fact. No, we don't prove facts. In science, we only have statements of the facts, okay? Okay, let's move on here. So what's my definition of definition? Okay, and you wonder why I have the funny hat. That's because in 2017, 500 years since Martin Luther pinned his 95 Thesis on the doors of a church, I pinned my 95 Thesis, second revolution, right? On the doors. I did it symbolically. On the doors of Cambridge University, okay? So what is a scientific definition? One that can be used consistently. That's a scientific definition. You can use it consistently in a term, then people can follow your reasoning because you're using it consistently. Definition, a limitation placed on a word's utility or extent. Very precise, concise, okay, to the point. In science, we do not define objects. We point to them, okay? And in science, we do not define the word table. And, you know, in her definition, let's see if I can get it back here. Ayn said, her second part there. Let me put this one next to it. Okay, so you can compare them next to each other. She said, definition is a statement that identifies the nature of the units subsumed under a concept. Whatever that means, okay? Units, again, she was referring to objects. And she said the definition of table, an object, right? An item of furniture consisting of a flat, level surface and supports intended to support other smaller objects. No, that's a description. That's not what a table is. A table is what we point to. A table is what you drew. A table is that which has shape. That's what a table is. Okay, and that's where you can see the difference she's defining objects. In science, we do not define objects. We point to them and then describe them as Ayn did in this case. You can describe a table after you point to it, after you tell the ET, the extraterrestrial, what the word table refers to. That's the first thing you have to identify with objects. So no, in science, we do not define objects. We point to them and we illustrate them and we name them. Okay, that's what an object is, and it better have shape. And certainly you can't point to mass, okay? You can't point to energy and things of that nature. Okay, and here, Ayn Rand, let me get this thing here. got so many of these, okay? Here Ayn Rand defined rationality, another word that she includes because she wants to show that she's objective, that she's rational, okay? And in order to do that, she had to come down to the word rationality, which is good because she's on the same words that I've been following on my own before I even met Ayn Rand's philosophy, right? Whatever she did, way of thinking. So we were on the same level. We were looking at the word object, we were looking at the word existence, at the word rationality. We realized we had to define these terms. So she was aware of that, and then I have to give her credit, you know, and again, I found out about this after I came up with my own philosophy, my own way of thinking. Then I figured, hey, she did the same thing, but she did it all wrong because she put the observer in there. She put senses and sensory experience in there. She made it subjective, not objective. Rationality is the recognition of the fact. Oh man, the word fact in there. That existence exists, whatever existence exists means. Existence exists. Existence is a concept, so existence cannot exist. That's very poetic. It's not very useful, very scientific. That's objectively what you have in front of your eyes there. Existence exists. That nothing can alter the truth. Truth. Whose truth? And nothing can take precedence over the act of perceiving it. Perception. Touch, see, touch, smell, taste, hear. In which is thinking. Okay, thinking is perception. Is that what perception is? Thinking? Or is perception a mixture of senses and thinking? I mean, if we're going to use a mathematical formula, we can always say perception, equal to sense plus thinking, or knowledge, or whatever you want to put in there. Okay, is that what perception means? Is a mixture of a couple things in there? That the mind is one's own judge of values and one's only guide of action. That reason is an absolute that permits no compromise. Okay, that a that a concession to the irrational invalidates. Invalidates. The word invalidate. We don't validate anything in science. Validate means that you submit it to a vote among the so-called mathematical physicists, and they validated it. Okay? So we don't like the words like invalidate or validate. One's consciousness, you're invalidating or validating your consciousness to see how rational you are. Is that what it is? You're giving, what is it, a 10? You lift your card and say 10, 9, 8, whatever, right? And turns it from the task of perceiving to the task of faking reality. That the alleged shortcut to knowledge, always to knowledge, right? Whatever that is, which has never been defined, by the way. The knowledge, which is faith, is only a short circuit destroying the mind. That the acceptance of a mystical invention is a wish for the annihilation of existence, and property annihilates one's consciousness. Whatever all that stuff meant. I don't know what she had in her mind. Okay, so what do we compare this against? Let's see if I can get mine up there, here. Oh, got it here. Give me a second here. This is my version of rationality. That's her version. Now see if you can see a difference. Again, you don't have to believe in hers or mine. I'm just comparing so that you can see the contrast. Criteria for defining irrational. Treating concepts as objects. Is that clear? Reification, concretization. Using inconsistent definitions or undefined words. Theory is inconsistent with or doesn't follow from the assumptions. Describing, especially mathematically, and claiming to have explained. And proposed mechanism cannot even be imagined. Now, is that clear? Is that concise compared to her poetry here about perception and existence and consciousness? See, this is what I want to show. I want to show that there's a big contrast between what Ayn Rand proposed in her so-called philosophy and what we're introducing in our paradigm shift that occurred at the turn of the century. And I'm going to continue with these definitions. I'm going to be analyzing them step by step. Right now I'm going to go and see if I can find some questions. I'll only give about 5 minutes, but let's see what we got here, okay? Says, do you state that atoms exist, and do you state that atoms are objects? Well, atoms are objects. Why? Because anything that has shape is an object. And do atoms exist? Well, not the one that I have inside my head. The one I'm imagining, that atom does not exist, okay? So when I try to imagine, I still have an atom because I can draw the one that I'm imagining, the one that I'm visualizing, but that one doesn't exist because it doesn't have location in the universe. What has location are my neurons, maybe the electric and magnetic fields that are running around my neurons, which is what thinking is about. It's just that computer inside my brain, the CPU, that runs also chemically and electrically, okay, magnetically. But that one doesn't exist, okay? Supernatural theory just states a phenomenon stems from a source apart from, I guess, the universe's driving logic. I don't know about whether the universe has any logic. The universe doesn't think. That there's an agent which doesn't have to play by the rules in some way and can interject. Okay, I don't know. Okay, we'll find out. If you were generating a universe with a machine, you could just tweak some region of memory. Tweak, I guess it meant. You don't need to go through ordinary causal channels. Well, yeah, in our universe, there has to be a cause and there has to be a mechanism, and those can only be mediated by objects. Yeah, tweak. Okay, they corrected it. Okay, the only vegan hormone. Give me a second here. I'm reading here. I believe Aristotle named 4 causes. Yeah, the material and efficient cause lines up with to be physics, and formal and final would be philosophy in your view. Yeah, pretty much. I think that's a good way of breaking it down. Aristotle had these 4 causes, material and efficient causes, versus the formal and final. Okay. And yeah, you would have to look at, I talked about Aristotle in the past. I'm not going to rehash him here right now. But if you look at Aristotle's books, both physics and metaphysics, and you'll get an idea of what he had in mind regarding what his notion of physics and metaphysics were. And yeah, I guess you could break it down. What Aristotle did was he bunched it all up together. Existence together with philosophy, or with ways of thinking, or with ethics, with politics, with justice. And that's, I think, where we started off on the wrong foot. Okay? Now, today we have that mixture. Mystic Magic, fortune fits the definition of Mother Nature. Okay. You need to believe in order to, okay, there's an objective base. Yeah, the point is to establish an objective base. Yeah, Luis says morality only applies to man because he is rational. Okay, but morality, again, is an opinion. Killing the guy who killed my brother, for me, was very moral, very justice, very ethical, okay? Because he killed my brother and I had a grudge, and I had to kill him, vengeance, you know. And so, you know, morality is very, very, very subjective. Morality is what everybody thinks. You know, you go to these Arab countries, they think that what they do with their women, you know, covering them up and so on, and doing female circumcision, they think that's moral. It's the right thing to do. It's a tradition and whatever. And for us here in the West, a lot of that is horrifying, but that's life, you know. I mean, what is morality? Philosophy should establish method of reasoning. No, not the method. I disagree there, at least. I'm saying that philosophy is part of science. And if it's part of science, it's got to explain something. In the case of philosophy, explain behavior. And now we can use the word philosophy consistently. If we go into method of reasoning, then we're going to run into a lot of trouble because different people have different methods. But explain, everybody can have their own explanation and still be within science, as long as they can defend, you know, that their assumptions, okay, and show that they are rational and that their theories are rational and follow from their assumptions. How do you know there's gravity? I don't know that there is gravity. Okay, we don't know. And it doesn't even come into the question. It's not an issue of how we know whether, you know, if there is gravity or that there is gravity, because that's not the issue. The issue is we have to explain a phenomenon. Okay, and you say, well, how do you know that phenomenon occurred? Well, you know, I could be paraplegic, quadriplegic, blind, deaf, mute, and maybe I can, maybe not mute, maybe one of those senses I'll reserve, and I can still explain something. Does the blind man, can a blind man be a scientist, is the question. A person who doesn't see gravity happening every second, you know. Maybe he could sense it, but I mean, if he's sitting in a chair and he's just thinking, can he explain gravity? Can he explain something? Someone comes to him and says, look, something fell to the floor, and we don't know why every time I let go it falls to the floor. Well, the blind man didn't have to see it. He didn't have to perform an experiment. He doesn't know that it fell to the floor in the sense that he did it himself. He went to the lab and carried out an experiment. He can still explain the phenomena. So physics is about explaining a phenomena, not about how we come to our knowledge. We have to make a distinction there, okay? So we don't care how we come to our knowledge of gravity, to use that word, how we came to observe this phenomena. What we have to do, physics is about explaining it. And we have to explain how the universe works. I mean, there's stuff that's happening on the other side of the universe that we don't even know about. We haven't seen it. There's no way to test it. We can't theorize about that. We can't put it under the rationalization of physics. You know, we can't say how a galaxy works on the other side of the universe that we can't see, that we can't touch, that we can't sense. Can't we just talk about galaxies in general? So no, knowledge is how we, in other words, the issue of how we came to perceive or observe a phenomena does not have any relation to the explanation that we have for how that mechanism works. And we have to distinguish those things, okay? We have to distinguish physics and philosophy from how we came to know. Okay, from our senses, from our perception, for our cognition. And that's not very easy for people to separate those two things. You know, and that's how we ended up with, I'm going to finish here because we're over the mark here. That's how we came to how we came up with black holes and space-time. Did we observe a black hole? Did we sense it? Did we touch it? Did we smell it? No. The guy sat back and said, let me think. What could have caused that star to go around? Nothing. And some people say, well, you had to observe the star to go around nothing before you could even ponder the issue. But that's not true. True. See, I'm talking about fact, truth, proof, right? No, the way they came up with a black hole is they did equations. And they said, look, if you take all this mass and crunch it into a very small volume, you end up with what we will call a black hole. So they conceptualized the black hole before they did anything else. They conceptualized it mathematically. Then they told the astronomers, go look for it. And the guy put his telescope up there and he says, oh, look, here's a star going around nothing. What's in the center? Got to be a black hole. What else can it be? That's how they came up with a black hole. So the black hole idea, the notion, was not through observation, through touching, through sensing. That came out by the guy sitting at his desk and saying, well, you know, what happens if we have all this mass crunched into zero volume? Well, we have infinite mass. Oh, man. Could there be such a thing? Well, yeah, you can have a star which is so big, much bigger than the sun, and gradually it compresses to a point where it crushes all matter out of existence, ends up with a zero volume, infinite mass. And what effect, how would we detect something like that? Well, look for it with a telescope. We should see a star that's either losing its skin, its gaseous skin, to this so-called object, or it's rolling around nothing. When they spotted Cygnus X1, the so-called first black hole that we discovered, you know, they found this double star system, or single stars, this star that was going around nothing, and they said, oh, that's a black hole. And that was supposedly the first black hole they found. So we didn't detect it through the senses. It's not like we first perceived it and then said, you know, that's a black hole. No, we came up with a notion before we looked at. You can conceptualize many things. I can conceptualize things that don't exist. I can conceptualize, you know, what is it, Pegasus, or you know, a unicorn, or a leprechaun. I can conceptualize anything I want. You know, and did I observe a leprechaun and that's how I came up with it? No, I came up with an idea and then it said, you know, I'm going to use it for my cartoon. Okay, folks, I'm going to be in 3 hours. I'm going to be in JFG's The Public Space. I invite you to be there. I'm going to be talking about space-time. We got, I think, a pretty good show going on with JF. And I will see you again on Wednesday. I'm going to continue with some of the definitions that Ayn Rand, or Ayn Rand, whichever way, came up with. And I'm going to show that they were all subjective, have very little to do with objectivism. Okay, so we'll see you on Wednesday. Okay, bye-bye.